You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome everybody to our next edition of the Fezcast, Season 6, Episode 747 or something. It's get that way. It's a bit like Lost. Do you remember that television series, Lost? No, I invested years and years in, and they ended up they were all dead and having a dream. It was awful. But there we go. It does feel like that a little bit.
Well, speak for yourself.
Well, I mean, especially considering it's a bit of a Groundhog Day for us because it's you, me and Sam, albeit we're joined by Alex tonight. And part of the show today, which we recorded Monday evening, obviously, you and Alex spoke to Sonia Green, Sonic, about her life, presumably, after rugby and now with the school and everything. How did that go, guys?
Yeah, she was really good. We touched on her career a bit and also the challenges of being an unpaid but essentially professional player. And she expanded on that, which is very interesting. And then a lot about the school.
And apparently, Alex, I understand that she thought that Doug was teeing you up for a question, and it all got back to Alex Osterbury. So, I mean, you've been promoted to head coach now, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, I don't think it helped that the name on screen was my mum's name. So it didn't say Alex, it said Helen.
Well, there you go. Well, that's all good fun. And I mean, Sam, last week we had an interview with Rotimi Shegan. It's good to get some feedback. Han Key messaged the Fezcast on Facebook and said how much she enjoyed the Rotimi Shegan interview. And indeed, the Charlie Beale interview I've heard has gone down really well as well. But how did you find your first week on the show, Sam?
Well, I've lived to tell the tale, haven't I? And I've been welcomed back. So I must have done something right. Glad to be part of the team. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Being available is half the battle, but I mean, there you go. That's
Yeah.
life, isn't it? Shall we start, though, with the least good of the weekend, although we will finish it with a big positive for Saracens. But the Six Nations over the weekend, first of all, well done to Scotland. I thought they played fantastically well and proven that France aren't unbeatable. Finn Russell had one of those games, didn't he, where he's absolutely mercurial. Next week, he'll probably play like a dustman or something, but, you know, that's the way you get with Finn Russell. But we got to talk about... Actually, Duncan, I'll come to you first, because I'm going to say Forza Italia. We are going to be critical of England and their performance, I think, on the weekend, quite rightly, and certain players in particular. But we have to put it into context that it's here no pushovers now. And indeed, playing at home in the Six Nations, the way that they have developed, they definitely... favourites at home, and so they've proven it. Now they've beaten every other nation in the Six Nations at home. We shouldn't be going in with the arrogance of thinking that England just had to turn up and beat Italy like we had done the 35 times previously. Forza Italia, well done to them. And I'll put it out here now, next year with their two home games being France and Ireland, I'll go down and put a cheeky tenner on them being champions next year.
Well, that will be cheeky. I didn't think they had to play particularly brilliantly to beat England, and they weren't particularly brilliant, but they were good. And they've got a few world-class players. I mean, Menoncello is just fantastic. But you're absolutely right. It's actually a cause of celebration, given that it wasn't that long ago everybody was calling for them to be replaced by Georgia, that they have now at home beaten all of the Six Nations and South Africa, and they have become like the Argentina of the Northern Hemisphere.
Italy didn't have to be at the very best. And indeed, when you looked at the amount of possession we had and the amount of territory that England had, I think it was 70% in the first half. Our problem was that we just did not score enough points. And that is partly to blame of the players, but I think an awful lot to do with how the team are being coached at the moment.
There were definitely points where you could see where we could have taken better control of the game, got possibly more points on the board, and started to pull away, and we just didn't take the opportunities. It's international rugby. You have to take the opportunities when you get them, and then they just couldn't do that.
A lot of that stemmed from, I'm afraid, formerly of our parish, scrum half Ben Spencer, who I think Ben, as fine a player as he's been over the years, this chance has come 5 years too late, and his style of play is definitely not the way of play. And I mean, Alex Mitchell, his speed of delivery, that breakdown has been excellent. Ben Spencer, his kicking was absolutely on the point. And, you know, Caden Murley did very well, I thought, chasing a lot of those kicks down. But his speed of delivery from the breakdown just didn't give Finn Smith outside him any chance whatsoever to bring the backs into play.
The days of going over there and putting 50, 60 points, that's gone now. They are a truly competitive side, and that Menoncello he's something else. I mean, he signed for Toulouse just before the tournament, so the rich get richer there. But that 12-game winning run, we beat a New Zealand side who are in transition, not a really good New Zealand side, and I think maybe we started to believe our own hype a little bit. This tournament, it looks at loose ends. The players, to me, they look clueless, that they can't implement a game plan, or is the game plan not playing to the players' strengths? To me, it's a very confusing situation, to be honest with you. Smith had moments of brilliance and then moments of looked out of sync.
I don't see any direction. I don't see any clear thought from the coaching. And I think the biggest problem is that Borthwick is finding himself between two stools at the moment. Is he a coach or is he a director of rugby? And we know that the most successful teams, whether it be domestic level or senior level, and if we go back for England, Clive Woodward's era, which, okay, was 20-odd years ago, Duncan, but he wasn't the coach. He was the man who sat there, brought in the right coaches to implement his vision. Borthwick, as decent a bloke as he is, has he got a vision of play that he can impart to his coaches? Or is his position really he's a forwards coach who needs someone above him to say, this is what I want you to deliver?
If you look at Scotland, they don't play very differently to Glasgow. If you look at Ireland, they're basically Leinster in green shirts. A lot of people have knocked the Premiership, including your hero, Eddie Jones. But if you look at the best teams in the Premiership, Saints, Bath, Bristol, etc., they're playing a totally different game to what England put up on show on Saturday. They're not playing kick chase. They're playing a quick passing game. But those players are being asked to play whatever that was.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's what they want to play, which is why they're not really buying into it. I thought, you know, we did okay. We got ourselves into a place where we should not have lost. And then something mental happened, didn't it? Which was personified by Maro, who'd actually had a good game up to that point and then had a brain freeze, and also Sam Underhill. It was the pressure was getting to them, as much caused by the fact that they're just not happy.
I'll come back to you on that Maro Itoje yellow card, because it was a stupid thing to do, but it's indicative, and I'll ask Alex this, because you haven't spoken about this yet, I don't think, on the couple of times that we've mentioned Maro. It's indicative of where Maro's head is, and I think he was born out of frustration. I think he was trying to inspire the team to do the right things, but I think what the biggest problem there is there isn't enough strong candidates on that field to, on the field, forget what the coach has said and actually play what's in front of them. The only person who would be able to do that would be contractual mention Owen Farrell. And actually, against France, I'd be giving Owen a ring and saying, look, a one-off, mate, come in and try and help us not be totally embarrassed. Because we know this from British Lions when him and Johnny Sexton basically took over the coaching from Warren Gatland in New Zealand and said, you know, no, we're going to play this way. And that's what we needed. We needed a player on the field who'd turn around and say, I don't give two hoots what the coach has said. If he wants to give me a telling off at the end of the game, he can do, but we're going to try something different. And that just didn't happen, did it, Alex?
Maro's yellow card, it showed that he was just frustrated and trying to do anything he could. He knows the players he's playing with. He knows that they can play better. It's just how he was trying to, you know, say, okay, what can we do? But actually, then it ends up in a yellow card with down players, and we're then trying to get the win, and it makes it harder. So I don't think you need players on the pitch who can say, the game plan isn't working. We're going to do what we think is best because we've got this situation in front of us. And actually, if you then go and have a good performance, the coach might say next week, we're going to try and do that more because it works.
And then the other problem is the fact that you've got Jamie George, who's 63 years old, or however old he is now, I mean, mid-30s. He played 20 minutes minimum of that second half on one leg. And he did that because the England management do not trust their backup hookers to come on. And a 36-year-old Jamie George on one leg is a better option than Luke Cowan-Dickie or Theo Dan or whoever else is the next hooker off the rank. And Jamie had a fantastic game. I put him in my team of the week. You know, I gave him 9 out of 10. I thought he was absolutely superb, especially considering he was doing it virtually in a wheelchair by the end of the game.
Jamie did have a superb game. And yeah, I'm no big Cowan-Dickie fan and never have been. So to me, again, it just comes back to the frustration as well with Maro. I don't know if you've seen it on other media outlets where he's having a bit of a heated debate with Finn Smith. That's not the Maro we know. And I think it's just everything's got to him. They look like a team at the weekend that weren't playing for the coaching staff. What England have at their disposal is better than the game plan that's been implemented. Now, either they can't understand it and they don't get it, or they don't want to play it. And I think it's the latter. One thing that worries me above it all is that Steve Bothwick comes on and he never takes any accountability at all. It's no, my way. This is how we're going to do it, and we're going to keep doing it this way. And it's frustrating. I just don't get it, to be honest with you. Serious questions need to be raised. I don't hold any hope going to Paris with a wounded French team that basically they did blow the Grand Slam at the weekend. I'm very concerned that you could have one win from 5, and what happens next?
I think what happens next is somebody at the RFU is going to have to make some tough decisions. And unfortunately, I don't think there is anybody at the RFU who will make those tough decisions. We've seen the comment come out from Bill Sweeney today, Duncan. And basically, the 13 wins, or however many it was, up till the Scotland game, has given Steve Borthwick an awful lot of credit that perhaps is a bit of false credit.
Well, even with all those wins, I read today that Eddie Jones had a win ratio of 76%, and Steve Borthwick's had, what do you think?
I would say probably 65%, something like that.
53. It's low, you know. It's really, really low. So
I'm not going to go too much into the Eddie Jones things. There are reasons behind that, though. But, I mean, I think Borthwick is turning into Eddie Jones 2.0, which is a prescriptive coach. That doesn't work. And we've seen it with other teams this year. Scotland went to Italy, got a bit of a false result with the weather and everything like that. But Townsend, who's not necessarily a coach I particularly rate, but he's turned around and made some changes. You look at Wales, they got a thumping from us first game off, and they have improved because you've got Steve Tandy who's come in as a coach. He's got a clearly defined plan that he wants them to do, and he's prepared to back some youngsters in that and to do what they do best. He's not turning around and saying, you do this fantastic for your club, but I want you to do this for your country. He's saying, that's what you do for your club, that's what you do for your country, and he's given them that chance. Ireland the same. You know, they got beaten by France, and Farrell's come back and made some changes and works it out. Borthwick is that definition of madness, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting there to be a different result.
can I just say Italy should be studied by Wales, because a few years ago, Italy were rubbish because they had a crusty old fart hierarchy in charge of the game. They totally overhauled it. They made themselves professional from top to bottom, right down through their two clubs and into the development paths. And now they're starting to see the benefit of it.
Which, interestingly, was instigated by Conor O'Shea, wasn't it?
It was.
Who's now at the English RFU. But there you go. What you want to see is England players playing with the joy that a 21-stone prop, Rhys Carre, carry on wayward. So, I mean, the memes and the gifts of Rhys Carre's try. I mean, old Balcony, who I think is Robert Balcony, who I think has been one of the standout players in the tournament so far, an impressive player, was made to look an absolute Herbert by Rhys Carre. And the look of joy on his face.
He was never getting caught. He had it. No, but to be fair, I thought he's the reason for Wales's turnaround, isn't he? He's just, yeah, it's fantastic to watch. And like you say, everything that's flying around social media is absolutely brilliant. I think the one where it's to the Whitney Houston song, it's, if you're having a bad day, you can just put that on and you can't help but smile. It was fantastic. And he knew it. He's had a few little runs like that. For a big lad, He's got a bit of pace about him. He's got some lovely soft hands.
My favourite is where he's winning the 100 metres in front of Usain Bolt and all of those. So it's brilliant. But you're right there, Sam, because remember, about middle of last season, wasn't it, when we'd all have a chuckle because he'd make a big break and we'd go, God, look at that bloke with the big belly go, you know. But since then, the strength and conditioning team have continued to do a great job on him. And his re-signing was the big story of last week. And that is fantastic news.
It's not a belly. It's just a nitrous oxide store. That's what I reckon it is.
How good was the timing on that, though? Signing that he's done that and he's gone and done that. So, yeah, he's probably done himself out of a couple of bob there. But yeah.
Shall we have a break there? And then after the break, we'll come back where Duncan and Alex went and spoke to club legend, Sonia Green, who's now in the teaching business, as it were, and you're going to chat to her about all things rugby and life in rugby and life after.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterberry here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome someone who I've got a little bit of difficulty introducing, because when we met at the SSA quiz, you gave me a ticking off for calling you Sonia.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely.
And every time I get an email from you, because it's signed Miss Green, a vice principal teacher, it always makes me sit up straight in my chair. So what should we call you?
Definitely Sonic. Definitely.
Is that what the students call you?
No. When I'm here at school, it's Miss Green. But when they're, well, not anymore now, I'm not playing. But when I was playing, definitely Sonic. It feels weird being called Sonia. I feel like I'm in trouble.
That's why you didn't like it when I called you Sonia. You joined Sudbury Rugby Club, I read, and were already with the England under-19s at that time. So how did you end up at Saracens?
Very soon after joining Sudbury, I went to what would now be classed as sort of county trials and met two of the Saracens coaches there that were leading the session. Yeah, the rest is history. I was playing at Sudbury with an incredible role model, Rhys Carre. She played for Wales and was one of the most capped players, men's and women's players for Wales, and she was at Sudbury. So I had an incredible role model. She got me super fit. I was very unfit. But both Lou and one of the coaches that moved to Sarries as well, Steve Savoury, just taught me what discipline, hard work really meant, and just, trained for that summer. And the rest is history. I went to Sarries and 22 years later retired.
I know, incredible stint. I mean, you've alluded in a way to my next question, because you were at Loughborough University, like a lot of the men's players, actually.
Mm-hmm. And women. A lot of women over there.
Yeah. And you saw the whole development from Bramley Road through Vicarage Road onto StoneX when you retired at 38, which is amazing.
I retired at 40, I'll have you know.
Did you?
Probably one of the oldest players in the Premiership, yeah. Proud of that. Age is just a number though, right?
Well, I don't know. I've got quite a few numbers behind me. When we met, you had everybody's jaw on the floor because you talked us through what the week sort of involved, being an unpaid player playing to a professional standard in those days. Could you run through what a typical week was for you?
Yeah, I think, it's a typical week for me. It's the same for probably a lot of, definitely women that play sport even now, although many of the players at the very top are paid, but a lot of men, we've had to start there. So, obviously I had to have 2 full-time jobs, playing and also, after uni, teaching. But to fit it in, I'd have to, you didn't have to, I made a choice. I chose to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'd train in the morning in the gym before school. My first meeting would sort of be 10 to 8 a.m. And then, have a normal full school day. Straight after school, I'd then go around to the the last sort of 12 years we've been at StoneX, go around to the stadium, and we'd have weights, skills, team meeting, physio, and then be out for rugby training. So that would sort of start anytime from sort of 3, 4 o'clock. Some nights I wouldn't be able to get there till 5 perhaps, but trying to balance, quite an intense role of being a vice principal at a school. But then we'd be on the pitch till sort of 9, maybe sort of 9:30, shower, eat as you drive home, eat, and then I'd be back on email, which I don't know how I did it. Now I've stopped. Now I've had 18 months out. I actually don't know how, but I'd be back on email to sort of midnight, some nights, maybe later, and then back up again at 5. But
And then at weekends, obviously, if you've got an away match, I would use the coach journey to catch up on schoolwork in between getting told off for not having team meetings. And then, obviously one day a week at the weekend we'd play. And then the last 4 years or so, I've been at the stadium on match days, mainly for the men, for all the home games in the W Club in hospitality. So, you end up basically just living at Stone X, and obviously being at Saracens High School, it's quite nice when the last couple of years when I've not actually been having to wear Saracens clothes, actually just wearing my own clothes and just having a bit more normality now. Perhaps what I would have been doing 20 years ago. But no, it's definitely not. Some people talk about sacrifices. It was definitely a choice. And I'm happy to have made those choices.
I bet you are. I mean, it was probably easier when you were at the Saracen school, but for a lot of that time you were working in Hackney, weren't you?
Well, I've been at 3 schools on my journey in education and leadership. So all 3 schools, obviously Saracens, but all of 3 of my schools have been very supportive of my rugby career. The first school that I taught in for 4 years in Loughton, the head teacher, who sadly passed away recently, actually, he was a Sarries fan, and without him, Chris Stewart, I wouldn't have been able to pursue both, because for all women, you had to be with an employer that was willing to support you. I mean, that's not totally fair on the RFU. When I was playing for England, there would be time where they would maybe give schools some money for a cover teacher, but it was very minimal. So basically you did it through people that were keen to support you and passionate about the game. So I was very fortunate. My first head teacher was passionate, and I ran a boys and girls rugby club at my very first school, and ended up one of the girls that I taught and started girls rugby. She ended up playing for Saracens with me. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, fantastic.
I was just been really lucky. The school I worked at in Hackney again for 8 years, very supportive. I was part-time 3 days a week for a short time when I was playing for England. But again, I wouldn't have been able to do it without the support of fantastic, leaders around me.
Well, good on that headmaster for helping you do it.
Yeah.
Saracens look as if they're going to get into the semi-finals this season and probably play Exeter, Quins or Trailfinders. But people always say when they're playing that it doesn't matter who they get as opponents. Do you think that's actually true?
Honestly, no. Obviously, from a professional point of view, like from a sport, you it doesn't matter who you've got in front of you. You go out, you do a job. Of course, you take each game as it comes and you do your homework. You now analyse the team that you're going to be up against. From that side of things, of course, it doesn't matter who you're up against. However, you saw the game at the weekend, hopefully, a good London derby, that rivalry, it really does mean a lot for the fans as well. So we've never played in front of huge crowds, but when I've been fortunate enough to play in front of big crowds, they're the best games. They're the games that you really remember. So playing away at the Stoop, like the girls at the weekend, they're some of my best memories. When you've got a real big crowd, and there's a little bit of hatred during the match from the crowd. We love it. It's what makes it. So we've got good history between Exeter, history between Quins. So, but whoever we get, it'll be an exciting game.
And who do you think is going to make the top 4? Because obviously Gloucester and Saracens have pulled away a bit at the top, but then it's a quite tight race for 3rd and 4th place. So who do you think will finish within that top 4 positions?
We've mentioned 4 of them already, obviously with Exeter up there as well. I think what makes this season really exciting is that, the games are a lot tighter. Every game matters. It's not like it used to be where there'd be these huge score lines. And that's what people have been talking about with the Six Nations, the men's Six Nations at the moment, right? I mean, this weekend was a classic. Although obviously everyone's really disappointed how England did. Actually, how exciting it is that Scotland and Italy are up there. So that's what people want. And whether you're a diehard Saracens fan or you're just a sports fan and you like watching some of the big tournaments, especially when it starts getting to the business end of the season, that's what we want. We want to, from the Women's World Cup, getting this new fan base, we want to make it exciting. So the fact that we don't necessarily know is better for the women's game.
Yeah.
We've talked about how long your career was. Trophies with Saracens, playing for the Barbars, captaining the England Sevens, England, etc. So the obvious question is, what were the highlights of your career for you?
Like I said about those big derbies, years ago playing against Richmond, I always talk about that. But playing against Quins at the Stoop, coming back from when you're 20, I think we were 24 points down, coming back to win it 30-something, 24, to the season before COVID. That's one of the best memories for me. But then obviously playing for, I've always said I love playing at Bramley Road. I know it is just a field with a little stand, but some of my best memories are there. It's where I made like some of my best friends, like my rugby family, right? They're some of your best memories. And no matter how many incredible experiences I've had, like playing in like World Series for sevens around the world, like nothing quite beats just why we play, because we have fun, Yeah, so Bramley Road, some great memories there, but I definitely say Hong Kong sevens is up there. Yeah, playing against Australia, going into extra time, the men had been knocked out. So all the expats that had a few drinks for the last 3 days were supporting us. Yeah, so that would definitely be one of my best experiences.
I saw in Rugby Pass, your stats for 22-23 season said tackles completed 100%.
Wow, that's not true. I don't know who wrote that. It definitely isn't true. And if anyone is listening to this that's played alongside me, surely no one's got that stat. But whoever wrote that, thanks. That's very kind of them. No, definitely not. And also, everyone knows I'm not like the biggest. I was never the most skillful player. I actually did an assembly this morning to the kids. They've got like 25 school days till their GCSEs start. So it's the business end of the year for the kids at school. And talking about, what's going to make the difference on that all-important results day. And it's saying that, the most successful athletes, the most successful businessmen and women, they're not always the brightest. And I will always say I'm not the most skillful player. I couldn't put in the 15-metre pass off both hands as much as I'd try, and I'd work on it. And that's what got me to where I was and why I ended up playing for so long. But just because it's just my work rate, my discipline. Like I pride myself on being one of the fittest on the pitch. So I would try and make that last ditch tackle. It wouldn't necessarily look pretty, wouldn't have the best technique, but I'd make it, or I'd get to that last breakdown. Yeah, hopefully have a breath to make a fairly decent decision at a line out. But yeah, like I say, definitely not the most skillful, but that's one of the messages I always give to the kids. I was literally saying that in assembly today. So
we obviously got a very good PR then, doing a good job for you.
Yeah, I don't know who wrote that. I didn't pay anyone.
Alex.
No, he wouldn't. Oh, you mean? Well, no, he definitely wouldn't. He definitely wouldn't.
When you're watching the games now, do you find that you analyse the game and look at them critically, or do you just enjoy it as a fan?
Girls, when I first started playing, didn't watch enough rugby, and I think like watching more rugby, it makes you a better player. And so that was something that I learned as I got older, and that's definitely something which makes me enjoy the game more. And even this weekend with the men's game to the women's game, like I actually just love being I sound like a bit of a rugby geek, but I just prefer to be at home and watch it on my own. So even like, everyone during Six Nations, obviously we've got the last game for the men's next week, the women's coming up. Everyone's like, you're going to come to this game, you're going to come to that game. And part of me thinks I'd rather I don't mind going to, a pub or going and watch it live, but I'd actually then just want to go home and watch it on my own and analyse it. That was something that I used to really enjoy with the line-outs. That's why I used to love leading line-outs. I just really thoroughly enjoy watching the opposition, breaking the game down, breaking the line out down.
During the World Cup, I had a lot of male friends who were very familiar with watching men's rugby, but weren't familiar with the women's game, who were saying that the quality of women's rugby makes it the best women's team sport in the world in terms of equaling the quality of what you're seeing from the men. And the quality has improved so much over the time since you were at Bramley Road. It must have been very exciting to play through that and see the women's game just improve and improve and improve.
Yeah, it's a hard question because obviously when you're in it, you feel like, you're absolute best. Of course, now looking back, even just in the last 2 years, the game's changed. Like with the men's game, like that people are getting bigger, faster, stronger. Like the expectation physically on your body, as well as just like the speed of the game, decision making, everything's improved, which is why it makes it more enjoyable to watch. If you invest more money into any sport, when you look at women's cricket, women's football, if you invest more money into the game, you're going to have better coaches, you're going to have the video analysis, the sports nutrition, the sports psychologist, the facilities, and all of that makes the athlete perform at their absolute best. It makes you, even more professional, if that is such a thing. So, of course, that's going to make the game more enjoyable to watch. I mean, even if it's on match day, you think the fireworks, the music, the commentary, everything just makes it more enjoyable. I can remember women's rugby where it was on TV and the game would be shown, there'd be no commentary. It would just be like a still movie. No one's going to want to watch that. whatever sport, men's or women's, like it's everything around. And nowadays, what makes it really, I think, exciting to follow is like people know who the players are. They're a character. You want to follow them if you're on social media or not, but you want to follow them. You want to read about them, whether it's like the highs and lows of the game. I thought it was great during the World Cup how you just got to know a little bit more about the players, and that the women seem to be a little bit more honest and raw than the men. I'm fortunate enough that I get invited to some like charity dinners and hospitality events, and I've been to a lot with men's rugby, and they can be very formal. There might be a few, like when someone's being interviewed, maybe a few laughs and jokes, but it's quite a formal event. I went to the Red Roses dinner just after they won. Maybe I'm biased because I know some of the girls, but you just see their character coming out, and it was a really fun night. It was silly. It was a little bit on the edge. Because everyone had got to know those characters over the World Cup, and just speaking to people who were there who normally go to men's events, and then that being their maybe one of their first big events for a women's rugby event, they just said themselves how they'd had loads more fun. It was way more relaxed. So I think that's maybe the change. But I always say this, when it gets to the point that people stop asking that question, what have the changes been like in the game, Sonic? How's it been since when you first started? We'll know that we're there when that question stops getting asked, right?
Not only do their characters come out more, but they work so bloody hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right after the game, they're all there with the fans, aren't they? And they put in so much work.
At Saracens, if any of you've been at a women's game and a men's game, and I don't mind being openly critical of the men at this, because if we win a game, we're in the change rooms, we're singing Tiki Tonga. And I remember, so Nigel Ray was coming over and he was like, "Where are all the women?" Because, it was like half an hour after the end, the final whistle. And I was like, they're still out there. They're still out there signing everything, like chatting to kids. Yeah, just engaging with the fans. Whereas if you watch the men's game at Sarries, they're straight in. Perhaps some of the fans have said, "Hey, look, we're here because of you." And so the last couple of games, actually, I've noticed, hopefully the women are leading the way a bit on this. And, I've noticed that some of the men will stay. And I just think it's really important because, let's be honest, the fans are what make the game. We've all played now behind closed doors during COVID. I remember speaking to some of the men and they were just like, "This is madness." I'm like, well, welcome to our world. That's what it was like initially. But the fans really make it. The fans pay our salary, right? They're the ones that follow you online and are there cheering you on. So, yeah, I think for me, that is a really, really important part of the game. So it's great to see that the women, not just at club level, but international level, are doing that.
The project for the Saracens High School to design the kit for the showdown sounds really exciting. Can you tell us more about that?
That's been a really great initiative. So, as you know, our kit sponsor is Castor. We're really fortunate at the high school that a lot of our partners through the club will often come in and offer opportunities for the high school people. So I don't know if you know much about the high school, but we're in one of the most deprived parts of London. Obviously, everyone here lives the values day in, day out. If you speak to any pupil, they'll stop and tell you what it means to be disciplined, hard work, honest, humble. But they also come from quite challenging backgrounds. And so because of that, we want to just give them every opportunity possible to make sure that when they leave, they're on an even playing field with whatever from, pupils that are anywhere from any school in London or further afield. So we're very lucky that these partners will come in and say, what can we do to support? So when Castor wanted to work a bit at the high school, we said, well, we talked about this idea of a kit design, but also just about educating them about the industry. So they had careers talks saying, look, you might not necessarily like rugby. You might not want a career in sport, but have you thought about all the different parts that make a team? So you've obviously got your coaches and your players, but what about like the sports scientist that designs the shirt? Or what about the marketing side of it? What about if you're into your computer science or your art, your textiles? Like there's just so many different careers out there that, possibly with the link with Saracens that you could go into. So Castor came in and talked a lot about the industry and like the various jobs within that, and then set up this competition where pupils all the way from year 7 through to the 6th form could design a shirt. And then what was great is their designers got some of the winning designs together, came in, created the final piece. And then what was great is when we had the kit launch, the players came into the high school and the pupils that were involved in the design, they were part of that kit launch, which was really cool. So if you watch this space, we're hoping that in the next couple of weeks, you might see a little bit more. So I've got a few plans about sort of in the build up to the big game, the showdown on the 28th of March, because this is obviously the first game where it's going to be a double header, both the men and the women are there. Have you been to the game at Tottenham before?
Yeah, I've gone the last few years.
So it's a great day. So it's going to be really cool that the women are there. I'm absolutely gutted. This is the first year I've not been because it's the day before I'm taking the pupils from Saracens High School on a ski trip to Italy. So it's a good reason why I'm not there, but I'm pretty gutted that I'm going to miss the women playing. But
yeah, skiing in Italy doesn't sound bad either.
Yeah, a lot of the kids I'm taking have never been abroad, so it's a pretty cool experience. So
you were talking about the high school. There's a couple of primary school sites as well, aren't there?
That's right. Yeah, so we're a multi-academy trust. So we've got 3 schools now. We've got the high school, and we've been open 8 years. And then we've also just brought into the trust 2 local primary schools. So that's a really interesting challenge because obviously starting any business, any organisation from scratch, you can, establish your culture, your values. We've brought staff in, teachers in from various schools where, things are going when you think, right, we'll steal that person, we'll steal that idea. And you can start and when you make mistakes, change things as you go. The new challenge is now we've got 2 schools that are obviously 2 very different schools and bringing them in and trying to establish a new culture within their organisation and bring them part of the family. So it's a really exciting challenge. Hopefully they'll also get the benefits of being part of I obviously know Saracens are an elite organisation, but we're the only club in the country, we think in any sport, that's got a state school like we have. Obviously you might have your academies, but yeah, we're just a state-funded school serving the local community, local families. So yeah, it's a really special and unique opportunity, I hope, for these 2 primary schools, and hopefully one day we'll have even more schools. That's the plan.
Being a local resident, I know exactly what you were talking about with the challenges at Graham Park.
Yeah.
And I got to say, when the school was opened, I was so proud that Saracens was doing it. But do they have rugby teams?
We do, yeah, at the high school. I run a rugby team. I don't know how I managed to find time for that. But yeah, I've got myself and some of the other PE team. We've got girls and boys rugby. We've just had 3 weeks of girls tournaments for year 7 and 8 down at StoneX. And it's been great. There's been maybe 5 or 6 other schools on a Wednesday night there. So to be honest, I think my boys might hate this, but my girls rugby at the moment is probably stronger than the boys. It's really difficult in state schools. There's a number of state schools that aren't doing boys or girls rugby at the moment. And I know the RFU is in a bit of a time of change at the moment. I know there's a lot of focus on, what they can do to improve grassroots. They've recently brought in this new idea of T1. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
My personal opinion is I don't particularly like it. It's like the RFU's version of touch. So it's to try and get more people into rugby. But if I tell my girls that we're going to play touch, they'll say, is it T1 or is it touch? They don't want to come. If it's contact, they'll come. So that's actually part of the game which they love and which is why they do rugby and which is why I did rugby. So I think we need to be really careful about this idea of T1 and I think even London Youth Games now, they don't have contact rugby. It's this T1 or touch style rugby. And I understand in sort of primaries, getting kids into tag and touch is really important. And also the other end of your career, when you're retired, it means you can still stay in the game by playing touch. I know some old Sarries players that are going off to the Touch World Cup and Touch Euros, and which is great. But yeah, I think we need to be really careful we don't lose that element of the game.
I was going to ask, what schools do you play? Because most of the rugby playing schools are private schools, aren't they?
I mean, Saracens are great. The foundation, they're really, and Project Rugby and the RFU, they're trying their hardest to get more rugby into schools. And it really does depend on whether you've got a PE teacher. My bread and butter is I'm a PE teacher that's going to drive rugby in the school. And it's about making those connections with other local schools. The bit that's missing, and which what we need help with the RFU, is where you have your football leagues and your netball leagues and your athletics. You need that in state schools. If it was there, then, and that's the thing, kids will turn up to training if they know that next week there's a match. If there's no matches in the next few weeks, they won't come training. So there needs to be a league system. And if it wasn't for Saracens running those events at StoneX, there wouldn't be any rugby for local schools. So
it would do those posh boys at Mill Hill a load of good to have a load of kids from Graham Park turn up, wouldn't it?
It would. And I tell you what, the girls about 3 years ago, so one of the PE teachers there used to play at Sarries, so she's set up girls rugby, and we went along and had the first ever girls rugby match, Saracens versus Mill Hill.
Oh, fantastic.
Since it had opened, it was in their 200 and something years. So that was an interesting day.
How did the students react when Ms. Green came in with 2 black eyes from a game?
I think by the time I was here, it was just normal. But my first school I taught at in Hackney, it definitely helped get me a little bit of status when I first started teaching in a London school, and I was quite fresh. I was a bit green myself. But yeah, I think, well, not I think, I hope that I'm a role model. Yeah, I know, jokes aside about the black eyes, but I'm really proud to say that I played sport at an elite level. But just like being a role model for other, well, girls and boys, just to show like you don't have to be an elite athlete, but just as long as you're disciplined, as long as you work hard, you'll be successful. And if you use sport as the way to sort of show how important those values are, then so be it. But whether it's being disciplined in your maths lesson, in drama, whatever it is, I hope that they can see the benefits I've got from sport. I always say, like, it wasn't for Saracens, it wasn't for my rugby, I wouldn't have been the leader I am.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to run a school. It's transferable skills, isn't it, with sport and whatever career you go into. I think just having something else about you, whether it's a hobby, it's just really important to you being successful. So that's what I hope the kids can take. Yeah. The black eyes maybe just make it a little bit more visible.
Give you credibility.
Maybe.
I've seen news stories. I think there was one the other week about Alec Cleary and Louis Johnson going in to help with reading. Is there a lot of crossover between the club and the school?
We try. I'd like there to be more. I'd definitely like there to be more. Yeah, hopefully my role on the board now means that I can really try and foster those relationships between the club and the school. Like I said, the partnerships from like a sponsor's point of view, they're regularly wanting to come in and work with the young people here at the high school. Perhaps more at the high school because it's more around like work experience and careers. So that's obviously the slightly older, it's better. But I think it's great for World Book Day, which although we celebrated World Book Day here, obviously primary World Book Day is like a really big day of the year, isn't it, in the calendar? So I think it's fantastic that Saracens players were going in on that really important day. They need to know that they're all the families in both the primaries and the secondary. We're part of something very unique, very special. Like you said, you're local, Graham Park. A lot of people don't know who Saracens are, even though they've got a Premiership men's and women's side on their doorstep, a foundation that does a huge amount of charitable work for not just young people, but elderly people in the community. The more that we can raise the profile of the club in the community, the better. So hopefully by having 3 schools now, will really help with that. And you hear the children in the background whistling.
I was just about to say there's a great werewolf impression going on behind you. It adds some character. We don't normally have werewolves on.
Yeah.
What is your role on the board then? That's something you've just recently taken on, isn't it?
So I was in the summer I was invited to be on the board. So yeah, that's a good question. What is my role? I guess I asked that when I was asked, as I was invited to join, and I said, well, what is going to be my role? And actually, after the first meeting, it was pretty clear that, I hope that I can just be grounded I've been on the ground as a player. It's maybe a bit more real life experiences when decisions are being made and saying, hang on a minute, as a player, have you thought of this? Have you thought of like the impact of that decision on whether players are going to sign or whether like player welfare or from the men and the women, I hope from both, not just for the women, I hope I can be a voice for the men's players as well. And obviously then my role with the schools and making sure that, I'm a voice for all 3 schools and just, making sure that Saracens is on the map for the community. Like, we've had this rebrand this year of it, 150 years of, the original North London club, but really, if we want the community to get behind us, we all know that rugby for men and women across the country it's a dying sport, whether it's people watching it, whether it's people taking part in it. We want to raise the profile of the game. Like, you don't have to be a player to be part of it. You could be a volunteer, you could be a fan. There's so much more, so much that rugby can give.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. I just got one last question, which is, are you still surfing?
Oh, my goodness, yes. All this time that I've now got. That's a lie, I don't have a huge amount of time. So I went to Costa Rica at Christmas for 2 weeks to surf. And then I've just, in half term, so 2 weeks ago, got back from being in Portugal.
Some big waves there.
Scariest waves I've ever surfed in my life. So I need to fill the void. So I'm doing CrossFit at a decent level. I've had a few competitions recently. And so it's all these things that I've found are like time to do, which I've never had time to do because of the choices I made for rugby. It's great. I'm loving life.
Are you up and down to Cornwall a lot then?
Obviously, I do have quite an intense job, but my plan is to go. I'm going skiing with the kids at school at Easter, and then the second week I plan to do a little trip. I've got a camper van, so it's easy to get there.
I'm sure you'll be there on Sunday, won't you? the big game with Gloucester.
That is one hell of a game, isn't it? We've got a huge weekend of rugby for men and for women. So, and I'm also really looking forward to the men's premiership starting up again, actually.
Definitely.
I feel like I'm missing it a bit. I think people always say that, don't they? And then what's great is that starts and then the women's Six Nations starts again. So yeah, it's just some really exciting times for men and women's rugby and especially for Saracens.
Thanks once again for coming on. It's been a delight.
Well, hopefully I'll see you at some games in the next few weeks.
We'll both be there on Sunday.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to our next part of the Fezcast. And yeah, brilliant interview there with Sonia, Duncan. Sounds like you really enjoyed yourself with that one, Alex, even if she thought you might have been Alex Osterbury. But I mean, yeah, a really good chat there. And I mean, it's interesting, wasn't it, Alex, that she talks about the workload. Women rugby players, unless you're at the very, very top, what you've got to combine as female rugby players, it's huge, isn't it, Alex? And, you know, she went into it, but was very clear that she wouldn't have changed anything about it either.
Yeah, and if you speak to a lot of players who've been through that transitional period of the game, they actually say, yes, we would have liked to be professional full-time. It would have been great. But actually, they liked doing it. And, you know, the stuff that they got out of it, actually, they wouldn't change it. You know, wouldn't say, yeah, it would have been great to be professional. But actually, we don't mind doing it because it means that the players that come next then understand what it's like to be professional and not have to balance two jobs.
As much as you're loath to say it, but the women's game can learn a little bit from the men's game, and more so in how not to do it, I think. Because, I mean, you won't remember, Alex. I mean, you're not old enough to remember. Us three guys will remember the days when the men's game was amateur. And it was only sort of 95, 96 when the game went professional. And we still see the fallout now. And I mean, it all comes from the way that, you know, we discussed last week about the stories of the Telegraph about Saracens and everything like that. It all came out because basically they were doing stuff. And for the last 30 years, pretty much every time something has happened, it's the first time they've ever seen it happening, Duncan. So hopefully the women, as their game gets more professional, will look at the last 30 years of the men's game and going, well, we ain't doing it that way.
It's going to continue to be that mixture of professional, semi-professional and professional players who don't get paid for the foreseeable future, I think. The crowds are big for the Six Nations, for the international games. They're not yet big for the club games. They need to grow the crowds at club games for it to become fully professional.
We'll move on now to the game on the weekend. The crowd there was pretty poor again, wasn't it? Which, you know, we discussed it when we played Leicester, and you can understand why. When we played Leicester got a team that are being thumped all over the shop. So why people aren't going, I don't understand it, particularly if you're a rugby town. They should have been supporting it because it's the only way it will get better. But you can understand it. But Quins are a good side that have had lots of success, and perhaps not having the success that they have in previous years, but they're fourth in the league still. And you'd expect more people to be turning up to support them. Even, you know, it was on a Sunday. There was no other particularly much rugby on.
Well, I would just say this. That was the first time, the Italy game at the weekend, yes, there were a lot of England supporters there. It was the first time that Olympics stadium was up at 70,000 people. And look how long it's taken. Hopefully Italy can get another team and they'll move on. It was the first time, by the way, that Quins had opened 2 stands. So there is progress going on.
The result and the performance especially given the pressure put on by Gloucester Hartpury previous to the kickoff. That was a big statement, wasn't it? I mean, they got out there. First half was a bit sort of like to and fro, wasn't it? But the second half, we saw absolute dominance from Saracens women, including the coast to coast, Chertsey Road to the council depot on the Jess Express. There was some bravery, some courage, and some expansive play there. I mean, I'm not sure how many teams would actually have the guts to go from their own post in that way. And I mean, there was nearly 2 intercepts before the ball got to Sophie Bridger, wasn't there, and made the break. We're just fantastic to see, Alex.
The first couple of times, obviously, we scored. They then scored straight after, and actually, they could tell that kicking the ball out when we got it after Quins kicked off didn't work because Quins then went on to score. So actually, Zoe was able to change the game plan and say, no, we're not going to kick it out of our half. We're going to play. Then we could start fronting up to Quins' physicality and start to change the game in our favour.
Yeah, Zoe did take some hits as well, didn't she, Sam? I mean, there was one where she was laid out for a good, appreciable time after taking a bit of a rib tickler. But she played, that second half in particular, she played flat and she was happy to take those hits because she was opening it up for 2 players in particular. I'm going to talk about in a minute, but Zoe, that's proper standoff playing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that was a proper hit that she took. I didn't manage to see the whole game. I saw about 50, 60 minutes, but I did see that hit, and yeah, it took the wind right out of the sails. That was a proper rugby tackle, that was.
Blackburn Rovers had a strike force. They called it the SAS, which was Shearer and Sutton. We've got our own SAS, haven't we, in the centres, in Sophie and Sydney, who were absolutely outstanding. I mean, they... Zoe sat there playing on the line and she's bringing them in. I mean, Sophie's break to set up the Jess Express was amazing, but Sydney made some breaks. In defence, they were hitting everything. They had the physicality to match Harlequins, but they also had the guile to beat Harlequins, Duncan.
We're coming on every week and saying this team is superb. Pick a player. I mean, you're right about Sophie Bridger and the centres. Absolutely brilliant. Every player playing in the team was absolutely brilliant. And here's the thing. That squad did not have Sophie de Goody, Marley Packer and Rosie Gallagher.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it?
We're just so good at the moment.
The other player, I think, who was excellent was Alicia Corrigan on the wing, Alex. I mean, she had an absolute... I mean, again, another one brings the physicality, but also brings the invention as well. It's great to see.
Towards the end of the game, she was the only real back 3 player we had on the pitch because we had Amelia McDougall, a fullback, and Olivia Apps on the wing because of the players. Lottie went off, probably took a knock, and I think trying immediate fullback is good, but I think Alicia Corrigan kind of stepped up in that position and was directing that back 3 to say, this is where we're going to go. But even before that, I think having the threats on both sides of the wing with Lottie and with Alicia meant that it spread Quins' defence a lot. And you didn't know which way we were going to go, but also then they could come inside if we needed them to and go through the middle.
And then you've got Poppy Cleo running around like she's 21 years old all over again. Obviously, her police training is helping her with her performances on the field. She just looks like she's loving the game, Duncan.
Oh, she really does. I've said before, she looks like a Binny Vunipola, the way that she can keep going forward with about 4 players hanging off her neck. Yeah, she's just brilliant.
The league is really Saracens versus Gloucester Hartpury. And, Gloucester Hartpury are keeping us honest at the top of the league. They come to Stonex this weekend on Mothering Sunday at 12 o'clock. Unfortunately, I can't make it, but what a huge game that is. And everybody who can get along needs to get along to be that extra player for them because this is going to be a big challenge, isn't it? I mean, the Gloucester Hartpury are good. There's no 2 ways about it. Duncan said, we're exceptional. Gloucester Hartpury are exceptional. They should be first and second, and it's who they play in the playoffs at the moment.
Very much so, and who's going to be first and who's going to be second. So it's a huge game. Unfortunately, I can't get down there at the weekend either, but that's the game, isn't it?
It looks like both of them are going to carry on getting 5-point wins, with the few games that are remaining in the season. But our points difference is 100 points better than Gloucester. So if we can beat them on Sunday and make up that 5-point difference, if you like, I know it's not there, but with the game in hand, we'll be top. And I think psychologically it'll be worth something, that.
And I guess, Alex, you'll be taking your mum along on Mothering Sunday. As her Mothering Sunday, you don't have to get her a bouquet or anything. Just take her and buy her a beer at the ground, I suppose, is Alex.
She's got to drive, so she's got to take us all to the game. But yeah, hopefully we can get a win. And Gloucester Heart will be getting the bonus point because we didn't get a bonus point when we went to them in October. So actually, if we can stop them getting a bonus point, that's better for our chances of finishing top.
How do you think they're going to do that, Alex? Where do you see, if there are any weaknesses in Gloucester Hartpury's team, what have we got that can exploit those weaknesses at Gloucester Hartpury? You've been Alex Osterbury once today, so be Alex Osterbury again.
I think probably starting and finishing well, because we've got world-class players and we can make a full 23. They've got a very good 15. They've got some players from the bench, but actually they've probably got less world-class players on the bench. They've got younger players. So actually, if we can start well and almost not give them a foot in the game, and then also make sure we finish well and hold them out and hopefully stop them getting a bonus point from 4 tries or a losing bonus point, then actually it doesn't matter if they score a few tries in the middle. They will. They're a good side. We're not going to be able to keep them out completely. So actually it's making sure that we don't let them take momentum and take control of the game too much.
It may be a case, Duncan, of backloading the bench again and having those experienced players to come on as finishers. Have a Marley Packer doing a 30-minute spell at full beans, as it were, at the end of the game.
If those 3 players are fit, and Sophie de Goody apparently is coming back soon, whoever is on the bench is going to be a strong bench, and that's what we got. I mean, the one team that's really put the Frighteners up, as apart from Gloucester, first game of the season, was Bristol. And I think Quins tried to play that attackers quick game. They didn't manage to get way ahead of us like Bristol did, but they stayed in the game for 50 minutes. And it'd be interesting to see whether Gloucester do that, just attack us very, very quickly.
It's going to be a belter, isn't it? And I mean, obviously, it's going to be on the telly box as well for those because it's an early kickoff as well, so you can get the game in and then take your mum for Sunday lunch or something somewhere. Shall we have a break there and then come back and talk signings for the men as we finish off this week's Fezcast?
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And yeah, we've already discussed it very briefly. 2 big signings. And, thanks to Saracens for making a signing on a Monday or an announcement on a Monday, albeit it's probably been one of the worst kept secrets in rugby union. This is almost a bigger secret as the Owen Farrell coming back one last season, wasn't it? But I mean, Alfie Barbeary's signing from Bath to us on a 2-year deal. Seems like really good business that, there's a player, especially with the player he's replacing at Saracens, Tom Willis off to France. There's a berth at number 8 for England potentially open. He's had a couple of injury issues, but coming to our squad, fresh start as it were, can make a burst of that Rugby World Cup, can't he, on the back of coming in and signing for Saracens, Duncan?
It was the one hole. We were contemplating whether it was going to be Ben Earl and Nathan Mikaloff, obviously, and Andy Onyama Christie, but you need a proper number 8. Well, maybe you don't, do you, Jez? You could get away without a proper number 8 in a team? You proved that, didn't you?
Hey, most important player on the field, and I'll tell you, there's scrum halves of my own who'll agree with that, particularly one who had his hand broken once. I think it's a great signing, though. He's one of those players with the hair bear bunch, as it were. He's noticeable on the field, which is great. But if you're going to have hair like that, you've got to be good. And every time I've seen him play for Bath, he's been very, very good. And indeed, I think he's been unlucky not to have had more English selection, international selection, than what he's already had.
In my eyes, that's probably as close as you can get to replacing Tom Willis in terms of what he can offer. I think it's a fantastic signing. And this is the other thing with the George Martin signing here is the injuries. He has had some significant injuries, as has George Martin. If we can get them into our system, I'm not saying that Leicester and Bath's systems respectively and their conditioning program is any different, but that's the only downside on these 2 fantastic solid signings. And along with Thomas Williams, I'm very excited, and what a way for Mark McCall to kind of sign off, if you like, on the front line. There's 3 solid signings there, but if they can stay injury-free, fantastic. Everything I've seen of him previously is, that's one hell of a signing, and he will endear himself, but he has to sort that hair out, surely.
I mean, we could probably pick a pretty decent back row of players with amazing hair. I mean, imagine Sebastian Chabal and Jean-Pierre Rhys, for those of us even older, and Neil Back with long blonde hair. Alfie's still only, I think, 25, 26, so he's got a big future ahead of him as well, hasn't he?
And I think that's what Saracens need. We don't want an international coming in who's actually going to come in and then be out for internationals. And, that's hard to integrate. It's actually bringing someone in who's incredibly good, but actually isn't quite in that international arena yet. So they've got a season or so at Saracens to get fit and to properly integrate with the team. And then if they start going off and playing internationals, it's not so harmful to Saracens.
They've got that experience, though, as well, Duncan, which is always very good, isn't it? I think they've got the right blend there. They're looking at the future. They're clearly building a side of 24, 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds going forward. We talked 2 seasons of there being the Mark McCall next generation coming through. I think that reset's happened now, and that Mark's handing over and saying, this is what you should be looking at. I mean, George Martin's only 24, I think. He's still only a young guy. So, that's clearly the emphasis that we're putting on our signings, that we're not going to go out and get a 32-year-old South African or whatever just because they're available. We're going to actually look at young, hungry players.
I think we are developing a team for the future. Let's hope at some point the consistency arrives with the team. But there's one outstanding big rumour, because you look at Alex Lazowski sorted, Tom Willis, Andy Onyama Christie. There was a couple of other big rumours. The one outstanding rumour left, I think, the only one, is Elliot Daly to Newcastle. And following on from what you just said, I've been a big Elliot Daly fan in the past, but I think it is time for him to move on, because we've also got some fantastic young back players.
I agree. And I mean, obviously, Theo McFarlane's still perhaps up in the air as well.
The rumour mill's very strong on him going to La Rochelle.
I mean, but then again, as I say, normally what will happen, we'll probably wake up Wednesday morning, we'll put this out for broadcast and Theo will sign a 5-year deal or something. But, I do think, though, with the signings that we've made, Sam, that I think 3 months ago, if you turn around and said Theo McFarlane's off to La Rochelle, as we think will probably happen, we would have been, oh, woe is me. But in 3 months, you're not necessarily as worried, because we re-signed Andy Onyama Christie, which is a big signing, I think. And clearly there was some moments going on in there and everything like that, but they've sorted all of that out. And if Theo is 30, 31 years old, does go off, and fair dues to him, he's had a limited time in the game, so he's going to want to earn some euros if he can. Probably the only player that we've ever regretted selling is Vincent Koch. And, we don't really ever regret players going. And clearly that's because we've got the idea of who we want to sign to replace, and we're making sure that happens.
Hit the nail right on the head. McFarland, I feel, is a very nice luxury in my eyes. With the Samoan captaincy, he has his injury problems as well, but that back row is very, very deep. We've signed, 9, 10 of our own, re-signed, as well as these signings as well. Theo McFarlane, good luck to him. Like you say, late into the game, take what you can. No one would blame him or begrudge him of that. With the Daly re-signing or not re-signing, I saw something the other day, and I don't know if you guys did as well, where he's actually closer to coming back. And I was a little bit disappointed by that because of what we've got in that back line. And I think it's time to roll the dice. I'm a huge Elliot Daly fan, but I thought the weekend, coming back to the England game briefly, he looked woefully outpaced. I think it's time to move on. The one thing I found with the Barbeary signing as well, and I don't think we've touched on it, and we mentioned the Ben Earl thing as well. We don't see that Ben Earl Saracens much lately in my eyes, and it's because I think we're asking him to play 7. England are asking him to play 8, and I thought with Tom going, okay, we're going to full-time Ben to 8, and let's move forward and progress with who we have coming through. With the Barbeary signing, fantastic signing. It opens up another question or two to me. It's just that I think you're asking Ben to do 2 different things. I don't know what he's being asked to do, and I think he's put on some conditioning, and he looks better and he carries it well. But yeah, again, where's he playing and what are we asking of him and what are England asking of him and who's getting the best out of him? It's clearly England at the moment.
I would suggest in that situation, he is a 7.5. Not really an 8. He's a bit more than a 7. It's a bit like when James Haskell was playing for England and he was a 6.5. And I'm not putting Ben Earl in the same category as James Haskell because Ben Earl's twice the player James Haskell ever was. When he's so good at a lot of different things, you tend to fall between two stools. Ben's problem is playing at number 8 is that you lose everything that he gives you outside when he plays as an auxiliary centre. And I think Ben Earl's position, speaking as somewhat of a back row aficionado, regardless of what Duncan thinks, Ben's best position for me is open side. And I think that's what Saracens see from him, hence why they bought Alfie Barbeary, hence why they had Tom Willis. But he can play 8 if you need him to. I think England have fallen into the category of saying we haven't really, because Tom Willis is off to France, we haven't got number 8 that we trust in that position, so Ben's going to play there. But actually what Ben does best is he plays at open side, where he's explosive in the carry and he plays as an auxiliary back in attack. And him playing at 8 and having to give the instigation to those moves means that England have lost an awful lot of explosiveness in the centres.
The interesting question that Sam raises is that by prioritising England, Ben Earl has put on the timber to be a number 8, which has perhaps made him less effective at number 7.
I completely agree with you. The problem here is that the player is come out and said he wants to play number 8. It's the position he enjoys playing. And let's be honest with it, I sympathise with him because I've had that myself, albeit at a very much lower level. But, you know, if you can play 6 or you can play 7 or you can play hooker, sometimes you have to fill in and you know, when you really just want to play the position. Because even at that top level, even when you're stepping out onto that field at Twickenham and you're on England contracts and everything, the money's secondary. You're playing the game because you enjoy playing it and you're going to give your best performances playing in the position that you want to play in. And I think that's Ben's problem, Alex.
You know, if he wants to play 8, then that's fine. But also he needs to have that conversation with the Saracens coaches and say, this is where I think I play best. This is where I want to play. If you want me to play somewhere else, then you need to explain that to me. And that's how they're going to get the best out of him. And I think signing Alfie Barbeary is making that statement saying, we want Ben at 7. We don't want him at 8. But also it's, how can you then get the best of him if he's playing in a position that's not his favourite, that he prefers to play a different position?
The question comes down at the very end of it, and is that if the club are saying you're a 7 and England are saying an 8, he's got to work out whose name is at the top of the majority of his paycheck. And, you know, it might be a case of that if he plays 7 for Saracens and the next coaches come in and see him playing for 7, they're going to make a decision. Is he the best 7 in England? Now, I would say when he's playing 7 at his very best, he's the best 7 in England, so he shouldn't have a worry there. But you do have players like Henry Pollock, who's also obviously an extremely good 7, who wants to play 8 as well. You've got Sam Underhill, you've got Tom Curry. England have a profusion of open sides, let's be honest about it. So if he doesn't get picked, then there's a problem. And it's what's most important to Ben Earl? Is it being the very best player he possibly can be at his club side and winning club trophies? Or is England international honours, performances, games more important to him, Duncan?
It's possible. I mean, like hooker and scrum half, number 8 is a position where players often play 50 minutes so that you have 2 in a game. So maybe that's the plan. That is both Ben Earl and Barbeary. We shall see next season. Just returning to Elliot Daly, by the way. Yeah, he was run over or run round twice by the man who is one of the best centres in the world at the moment. But I had that sneaking suspicion that he's moving into what I called, you know, the final years of Alex Good type syndrome. Still a fantastic player. Still got one heck of a brain on him. But once they lose that half a yard, they're not the players they were.
I will say in Elliot's defence, the 2 times that Melancello went round him, if we'd had centres who could be bothered to tackle him, our centres on occasion on the weekend were like dairy milk, weren't they, with soft centres, because the fullback, you get exposed quite easy. those attacks should have been stopped a lot earlier than Elliot Daly. But once they did get to Elliot Daly, he made every effort, unlike Marcus Smith when he came on, who showed cowardice again in the tackle. But he was exposed, and, that's sad to see, isn't it?
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Now, just before we leave, we will say, when we did mention him earlier on, the absolute athlete, the specimen, the Adonis that is Rhys Carre has signed. And, we talk about good news signings. And, I mean, that did come last week on Wednesday after we put the broadcast live, Duncan. But, yeah, Rhys Carre, what a great re-signing that is. And along with a few other re-signings, that's an important one. And I think for Rhys, it was the right decision because, he's been at Cardiff, he's come to us, he's gone back to Cardiff, he's come back to us, he's playing his best rugby at Saracens, and clearly it's an environment that suits him, where they're not going to focus so much on what he can do on a bleep test or anything like that, and they're actually going to worry about what he does in the scrum, because the other thing, I mean, his try was great on the weekend, but he did absolutely monster the scrum again, to the extent Furlong was getting absolutely... He was losing it big style, wasn't he?
Agitated is the word you're looking for.
He was. They're concentrating on what props do call things. The props have to prop, scrummage, and give you 50 minutes of balls out rugby, and that's what Rhys Carre gives you every week, Duncan.
The reason why it was so joyous, his signing, is because, for me, it was totally unexpected. Bit like JMG a couple of seasons ago. He was so good, I expected that we would lose him, and we didn't. And it's always the surprises that make you happier than anything else, isn't it?
And we haven't mentioned YMJ, have we, when we talked about back rows and everything like that? Because, I mean, there's another player. And if they could nail him down for another 2 years or so on his contract, then I'll be very happy with that one.
And still young.
Absolutely. Well, ladies, gentlemen, thank you for your time again in recording this Fezcast. It's been fantastic. And thank you to Sonia as well for meeting with Duncan and Alex and doing a fantastic interview there. We'll be back next week. We will be reviewing the game against Gloucester, which are happening, and obviously looking forward to the showdown and everything as well, won't we, I think?
Bath first, that's right. It's Bath first, and then it'll be the showdown. So a big few weeks coming up, plenty to look forward to on the Fezcast. We'll say for now, ta-ra. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, everybody out for listening in again and giving us your feedback as well. It's always greatly appreciated. Until next time, all the best. See you later.
This is the Fezcast.